We have online from Professor Aumann. You remember we were not able to reach him yesterday on Zoom. He is there waiting and he'll start right now. Again, this was the lecture that was supposed to be given yesterday. The title is Incentive for Sustaining a Green World. Professor Robert Aumann, Nobel Laureate in Economics. Yes. Hello, Professor Aumann. Very, very good morning, early morning there.
Okay, so I'm here in Jerusalem, and I'm going to give a tour I'm going to talk about incentives for sustaining a green world. And in a nutshell, what I'm going to say is that to sustain a green world, it is important not only to develop scientific and technological techniques, but also to get people to use them. And this talk will illustrate incentives for sustaining a green world. Incentives. Now, what is an incentive? What do I mean by the word incentive? By incentives, I mean it's a device that makes others want to do what you want them to do. Now, let me give you an example of that. When I was a child, which is quite a long time ago, my parents did not have a lot of money, and sometimes so we used to buy cracked eggs because they were cheaper. My family, yeah, okay. Now, once in a while, I had one brother. Once in a while, there was some kind of piece of candy or something to share, and my mother would take the piece of candy and she would divide it into two and give my brother half or one of the two parts and give me one of the two parts. And she often this was fine, but sometimes there was trouble, and either my brother or I would complain. The other child got the larger part, and I got the smaller part. So there would be crying and complaints. Now, my mother got sick of this, and she devised a method to stop the crying and to stop the thing. She would say to me, Bob, you take this candy bar and you divide it into two parts, okay? You divide it into two parts, and then your brother, Peter, will take one of the two parts, but you divide it into two parts. So that gave me an incentive to divide it into two parts which are exactly equal, yes, at least from my point of view. And my brother could not complain, and I could not complain, okay? And my mother got what she wanted. She got that the two children, that the candy bar was divided into two, and the two children were satisfied. So everybody got what he wanted. So an incentive, again, is a device that makes others want to do what you want them to do. So now I'll talk about incentives for maintaining a green world. And here I'll give several examples. Now, the first example I'll give is in Switzerland. I don't know how it is now, but several years ago, uh, um, they said that you could not throw out garbage except for if you use a special garbage bag which you had to buy, and this special garbage bag cost 10 francs. Okay, 10 francs, 10 Swiss francs was, at least at that time, it was quite a bit of money, so there was an incentive to make your garbage as compact as possible. Okay, and this provided incentives not only for people to make their garbage to throw out as least as possible, but also it provided incentives for the people for the manufacturers and for the people who merchandise the food and other materials to use as little packaging as possible, because people would buy stuff which had a very compact packaging, because this meant having to throw out very little garbage. Okay, so this gave everybody an incentive to maintain a greener world. And this incentive spread out throughout throughout the system. Okay, and here's another example. This is in the west of Brazil, the western part of Brazil. There's an area called the Pantanal, and the Pantanal is an area which is you're not supposed to develop. It's close to development, but still there are private ranches over there and private farms, and but you're supposed to leave it wild. Now, in the Pantanal, there was a problem with leopards preying on the cattle, and sometimes a leopard would attack a cow or a goat or something like that, and kill it and eat it. Okay, or at least certainly start eating it and leave a carcass. Now, the farmers went out and they shot the leopards, okay? They shot the leopards, and as a result, there were fewer and fewer leopards over there in the Pantanal, and naturally, this was a threat to the wildlife in that area. Now, they decided on an incentive to get the farmers to stop shooting the leopards, okay? And the incentive was this, that every farmer who would bring to the authorities a carcass of an animal that had been attacked and killed by a leopard would get a compensation for that animal. And sometimes they would get a compensation even a little more than the animal was worth. So an incentive, so the farmers stopped shooting the leopards because it would be worthwhile for them to have the leopards eat attack the animal and kill the animal and eat part of it, Because of the compensation that the farmers would get for the carcass was more, somewhat more, a little more than the animal was worth. So here, and as a result, the population of the population of leopards in the Pantanal increased, and and this is exactly what was wanted. They wanted a larger. They wanted more leopards. They wanted a green world. They wanted the wilderness to stay more or less as a wilderness. So that's the second example. The third example I'll bring is from Nepal. And this is quite a few years ago. In Nepal, southern Nepal, there was a jungle. Northern Nepal has the Himalayas, but the southern Nepal was a jungle. And it was a very beautiful jungle. There were many animals and flowers and orchids, and it was a very beautiful green jungle with a lot of wilderness in it. Now, there was only one problem, and that is that there were swamps in the jungle also, and in the swamps were the Anopheles mosquito developed. And as a result of that, there was what's the Anopheles mosquito causes I've forgotten the word for it, but it's a disease, a very very prominent disease. I'm an older man. I've forgotten the word for it, but it causes this disease, and which is very prevalent in the world. And now this was unfortunate to have this disease in the jungle. What's the word for it? I've forgotten. I've forgotten. It's a very common word, but I've forgotten. I'm an older man, and I'm a little forgetful. But anyway, it causes the Anopheles mosquito causes a disease, so they dried the swamp and they got rid of the Anopheles mosquito. But as a result of getting rid of the Anopheles mosquito, the inhabitants bordering the jungle started to encroach on the jungle, and they started to cut down the jungle and to plant rice paddies. Within a relatively short time, a few years, the jungle was gone. It had all been cut down, and there were rice paddies, and no more jungle, no more tigers, no more orchids, and so this provided getting rid of the Anopheles mosquito, which was on the face of it sounds like a good idea, was turned out to cause incentives, the wrong incentives to cut down the jungle, to make an industrial world. So it's not enough to develop techniques and technological and scientific and chemical and engineering techniques in order to make a greener world, but you have to make people want to use them. Okay. And here's another example is in the United States. They are now destroying trails okay? Because the trails, there are too many people in the national parks, too many people, and it's too easy to go and have a good time in the national parks, and the overuse of the trails is so they are now destroying the trails, and there are people who want to use the national parks and to get to the forests and are encouraged to do so, but without using trails. And the trail system being destroyed, and that makes for incentives to maintain the wild nature as it is. In Israel, we have a situation where one-time dishes, okay, are we want to tax them. There is a population of poorer people who have a lot of children, and they use they make a lot of use of one-time dishes. So there's great opposition to taxing the one-time dishes. But so we have a great proliferation of one-use dishes made out of plastic or made out of paper. And this is very negative to the environment. We get a lot of garbage. We get a lot of non-biodegradable stuff being sold, and the idea would be to tax it, but the taxation is withheld because they have a lot of political influence. Now, so I think to sum it up, it's not enough to have it's not enough to have technologies and scientific methods to maintain a green world, but you should also need to get people to use them, okay? And you have to use them in a smart way in order to avoid creating incentives to pollute, incentives to cut down the wilderness, incentives to avoid negative incentives. It's important to think over what you're doing. For example, in the Anopheles, in the case of the mosquitoes, it was important to think it over whether you really want to dry the swamps. And so it's in taking account of incentives in taxation is very important for sustaining a green world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Aumann. This is right on our raison d'etre. SIPS is based on FLOGEN sustainability framework, which has 3 criteria: environment, economic development, and environmental protection, but has 3 pillars of actors that affects it. One, it is science and technology, you mentioned, but it's not enough. The other one is governance and management that should create this incentive that you beautifully mentioned, and education and civil society. There are 3 pillars, a table with 3 pillars. Any of those 3 pillars goes down, the whole structure goes down. So you are exactly on the same page with us with FLOGEN sustainability framework. Technology, it is a main thing to deal with, but it's not enough. We need an incentive. The incentive is part of the governance at the level of politics and also at the level of any industry and industrial complex. So it is right, on the topic. It is very interesting and we thank you very much on that. This type of lecture is rare in our summit, and we thank you very much. So this is I remember that when I was with you in Israel for a plenary lecture, you started with a cookie, with your history of your mother dividing the cookie. And I remember that very well. And this is incentivizing people to divide things and reach an agreement. I think you mentioned it several times.
Okay, yes.
You wanted to mention malaria, correct? Malaria is a sickness.
Malaria, that's the word I had
Yes.
forgotten, right. Thank you very, very much.
Yes.
Malaria, that is the word I forgot. And you know, I'm not a young man anymore, and my memory is weaker than it used to be. Yeah, okay. So I forgot the word malaria. I remembered the word Anopheles mosquito. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but I disagree on that. You are not. I disagree. You are not an old man. You are a young man.
Okay.
I forget things all the time, so it doesn't mean anything. So you're old. So you know, you are active every day. My doctor used to say, we do not get old because we retire. We do not retire because we get old, but we get old because we retire.
Okay. Okay.
You agree on that? Thank you very much again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
It's a highlight here to have you.
This is the last day of the conference, if I understood correctly, and I take it that it was very successful. And congratulations, and thank you very much for running this very important conference. And sustainability is as it's my own. It's really up there in one of the most important things in the long run for this world. Okay, thank you.
So I'll send you the link of the description of FLOGEN Sustainability Framework, which you really gave an excellent example. So technology is first, but it's not enough. So we have an incentive coming from a government and from education. Thank you very much. I'm going to send an email when you have time, the link, when you have time, check about this. By the way, FLOGEN Sustainability Framework, I invented this in 2015, it was published, and recently last year was turned into law in one of the municipalities in Brazil, in the municipality of Nova Friburgo. Every project have to pass those criteria of FLOGEN Sustainability Framework to be approved, which includes science and technology, governance and management, which include incentive that you mentioned, and education and civil society. So I'll send you the link. Thank you very much. You are invited next year also. Your age goes down, not up.
Okay.
Age goes down.